The towering observation deck of the Astra Voyager glittered with the reflection of 1,000 stars. Through the vast, transparent panels that curved elegantly around the diplomatic vessel's crown jewel, the Star Banquet Hall, the cosmos unfurled in splendid array. Delegates from 3 civilizations mingled beneath chandeliers of floating bioluminescent crystals, their voices a symphony of languages, dialects, and translation devices. Arlo Kent adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform for the 5th time in as many minutes. As the linguistics officer for the human delegation, he should have felt confident. After all, he had spent years studying the intricate nuances of the Silian language, with its 14 tonal variations and complex subtext-dependent grammar. Yet tonight, surrounded by the most important diplomatic gathering of the century, his palms were slick with sweat. "You look like you're about to face an execution squad," Captain Eliza Rodriguez commented, dryly, appearing beside him with 2 glasses of shimmering blue liquid. She handed one to Arlo. "Drink. It's Terran whiskey with a hint of Grenachian spice. Completely safe, but it'll take the edge off." Arlo accepted the drink gratefully. "Thanks, Captain. I just can't shake the feeling that I'm going to say something catastrophically wrong and doom the Alliance negotiations." The year was 2357, and humanity had spent the last century slowly building relationships with the galactic community. The Silian Confederation, a society of highly advanced beings, with translucent skin that shifted colors with their emotions, had finally agreed to formal diplomatic relations after decades of cautious observation. The militaristic Gronic Empire, with their imposing exoskeletons and reputation for tactical brilliance, completed the tripartite talks that could potentially lead to a historic alliance. "You're overthinking it," Rodriguez said, her gaze sweeping the room with practiced diplomatic awareness. "You're the best xenolinguist in the fleet. That's why you're here." She nodded toward the gathering of Silians across the room. "Besides, your friend over there has been watching you all evening." Arlo followed her gaze to the slender figure, standing apart from the main Silian delegation. Even at a distance, he recognized Laika Voss, the cultural attaché, who had been his primary contact during the preparatory communications. Her skin, like that of all Silians, appeared nearly transparent in certain light, with intricate patterns of bioluminescence that shifted subtly beneath the surface. Currently, a faint blue-green pattern played across her features, curiosity if Arlo's studies were correct. "She's not my friend," Arlo muttered. "She's a professional contact who probably thinks I'm going to embarrass everyone." Rodriguez smiled knowingly. "Well, professional contact or not, diplomatic protocol requires engaging with all delegations. Consider that an order, Officer Kent." With that, she glided away to charm a group of Gronak military officers, leaving Arlo to gather his courage. He straightened his shoulders, took a steadying breath, and made his way across the room. Laika noticed his approach immediately, her luminescent patterns brightening slightly. At just over 2 meters tall, she towered above most humans, including Arlo. Her elongated limbs and graceful movements gave her an ethereal quality that had fascinated him since their first holographic meeting months ago. "Officer Kent," she greeted him, her voice melodious, with the characteristic Silian harmonic undertones. "I had begun to wonder if you were avoiding our delegation." "Not at all," Arlo responded, in carefully practiced Silian, including the proper, formal greeting tones. "I was simply gathering my thoughts to ensure I would not waste your valuable time with idle conversation." The subtle ripple of gold that passed across her features suggested approval, perhaps even amusement. "Your command of our language continues to impress, especially your attention to the 4th respectful conjugation. Few off-worlders master it so thoroughly." Arlo felt a flush of pride. "I've had an excellent teacher in our preparatory communications." A server droid approached, offering a tray of delicacies from all 3 worlds. Arlo noticed a dish he recognized as Lorvax, a Silian fermented plant protein considered a delicacy. He had studied Silian cuisine extensively, but had never had the opportunity to taste authentic Lorvax. "You should try the Lorvax," Laika suggested, noticing his interest. This variety is from the northern continent of Celia Prime, made with traditional fermentation techniques. Arlo took a small piece, studying its iridescent surface, before cautiously taking a bite. The flavor was unlike anything he had experienced, complex, earthy, with subtle notes of something like cinnamon and sea salt. His eyes widened in genuine pleasure. "This is remarkable," he said honestly. "The harmony of flavors is unexpected." Laika's skin shimmered with what Arlo recognized as pleasure. "I'm glad you appreciate it. Many humans find our cuisine challenging." Emboldened by her approval and the effects of Captain Rodriguez's enhanced whiskey, Arlo decided to demonstrate his cultural knowledge further. He wanted to complement the dish using a Sicilian idiomatic expression. He had studied one that compared exquisite experiences to the natural world. "The balance of flavors is as perfect as," he began, then faltered slightly as he searched for the precise phrasing. He recovered quickly, proudly continuing, "as perfect as butterfly wings in mating dance." The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. Laika's skin flashed a brilliant crimson, and she made a choking sound that drew the attention of nearby delegates. The other Sicilians turned sharply, their skin patterns rippling with what Arlo recognized with dawning horror as outrage and shock. Ambassador Thrall, the imposing head of the Sicilian delegation, approached swiftly. His normally translucent form had darkened to an ominous gray-purple. "Officer Kent," he said in clipped standard English, rather than Sicilian, "you will remove yourself from this gathering immediately." "I don't understand," Arlo stammered, looking desperately at Laika, who seemed unable to meet his eyes. "What did I say?" "You have made an inappropriate proposition of the most sacred kind," Thrall continued coldly. "We expected better from Earth's representatives." Captain Rodriguez materialized at Arlo's side, her expression carefully neutral despite the tension. "Ambassador Thrall, I'm certain there's been a misunderstanding. Officer Kent is our most knowledgeable expert on Sicilian culture." "Then perhaps your experts are not as knowledgeable as you believe," Thrall replied. "The phrase he used is part of our most sacred bonding ritual of Vexus. It is not to be spoken casually, especially not in diplomatic settings." Arlo felt the blood drain from his face. The term Vexus hadn't appeared in any of his linguistic databases or cultural briefings. "Ambassador, I assure you I meant no disrespect. I was attempting to compliment the dish using what I believed was a common expression about natural beauty." Ambassador Thrall's skin darkened further. "You have requested a sacred, intimate bond with Attaché Voss, using language reserved for life commitment ceremonies. Such propositions are not made lightly among our people." The gathering had grown silent, with delegates from all three species now watching the unfolding diplomatic incident. Even the normally stoic Gronak representatives seemed to be observing with interest. "I request a private audience with Attaché Voss," Arlo said, desperately, trying to salvage the situation. "To offer my sincere apologies and understand the nature of my error." Thrall looked ready to refuse, but Laika, who had regained her composure, though her skin still showed traces of pink embarrassment, stepped forward. "I will speak with Officer Kent," she said firmly. "Cultural exchange requires understanding of mistakes as well as successes." Ambassador Thrall seemed displeased, but nodded curtly. "Very well. You may use the auxiliary conference chamber. This incident will be addressed in tomorrow's formal session." As Arlo followed Laika out of the banquet hall, he could feel the weight of dozens of stares on his back. Captain Rodriguez caught his eye as he left her expression, conveying both sympathy and a clear message: "Fix this." The auxiliary conference chamber was a stark contrast to the opulence of the banquet hall, utilitarian and designed for privacy rather than spectacle. As the door sealed behind them, Arlo turned to face Laika, mortification written across his features. "I cannot begin to express how sorry I am," he began. "I had no idea." Laika held up a slender hand, her skin now settled into a more neutral blue-gray. "I know you did not intend offense, Arlo. You would not have used such phrasing if you understood its significance. Please help me understand what happened, Arlo said. The phrase I used about butterfly wings? What does it actually mean? Laika's skin flushed faintly pink again. In our culture, the Tyrellian butterfly undergoes a unique mating ritual, where the vibration of their wings creates patterns of light, visible only to their intended mate. It is considered the most intimate and beautiful natural phenomenon on our world. She paused, seeming to gather her thoughts. For millennia, our ancestors have compared the commitment between life partners to this dance. The specific phrase you used is part of the Vexus, our bonding ceremony. Essentially, you asked me to join with you in the most intimate physical and spiritual union our people recognize. Arlo covered his face with his hands. Oh God! I basically proposed marriage in the middle of the most important diplomatic function of the decade. It's somewhat more significant than your concept of marriage, Laika corrected gently. The Vexus involves a telepathic bonding that leaves partners permanently connected. It is rare even among my people, reserved for those who share a profound connection. Arlo paced the small room, running his hands through his dark hair in distress. This is a disaster. I've potentially compromised the entire alliance negotiation. Perhaps not, Laika said thoughtfully. There may be a way to address this that satisfies both diplomatic necessity and cultural respect. Arlo looked up hopefully. I'll do anything required. Whatever ceremonial apology or restitution your culture demands. Among my people, when such a proposition is made inappropriately or in error, there is a traditional path to restore honor, Laika explained. The one who spoke the words must undergo a trial of insight to demonstrate whether they truly understand the depth of what they proposed. A trial? What kind of trial? A simulation chamber experience called the Crystal Storm, Laika said. It tests one's capacity for crisis management, emotional regulation, and clarity of purpose, all qualities we value in a life partner, but also in an ally. And if I complete this trial successfully, then the offense would be considered addressed, though not forgotten, Laika said. It would demonstrate respect for our traditions and willingness to make amends. Arlo nodded firmly. I'll do it. When can this trial be arranged? I can speak with our cultural representatives immediately. It could be prepared by morning, Laika said. Then, with a hesitation that seemed uncharacteristic, she added, There is something else you should know, Arlo. The Vexus proposition, even when made in error, is considered binding in a spiritual sense among my people. Some will view this incident as more than a simple mistake. Meaning that regardless of your intent, some of my people will consider us connected. There are old beliefs about the role of destiny in such matters. Not everyone follows the ancient ways, but Ambassador Thrall is notably traditional. Arlo absorbed this information with growing concern. Will this affect your position in the delegation? Perhaps, Laika admitted. But my greater concern is for the alliance itself. If this incident is not resolved satisfactorily, the traditionalists in our government may use it as justification to withdraw from negotiations entirely. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on Arlo's shoulders. What had begun as a simple linguistic error now threatened to destabilize a carefully constructed diplomatic framework, years in the making. I won't let that happen, he promised. I'll complete your trial and do whatever else is necessary to make this right. Laika's skin brightened slightly, patterns of gentle gold and blue rippling beneath the surface. I believe you will, she said softly. For what it's worth, Arlo, in all our previous communications, I have found your interest in our culture to be sincere, and your efforts to understand us admirable. Something in her tone gave Arlo pause. He studied her luminescent features, wondering if he was misinterpreting the subtle signals of her bioluminescence. Was there something more personal beneath her diplomatic poise? Before he could pursue that thought, the door to the conference room slid open, revealing the imposing figure of General Krath, the highest-ranking Gronic officer present at the negotiations. His massive exoskeletal frame nearly filled the doorway compound eyes, gleaming in the chamber's soft light. Officer Kent. The general's voice rumbled through a translation device. The Cillian ambassador has informed us of your cultural misstep. Arlo straightened, facing the intimidating figure directly. General, I assure you. To his surprise, the Gronak made a series of clicking sounds that the translator rendered as laughter. No need for explanations, human. I find it refreshing to see a diplomat capable of such spectacular errors. It suggests authenticity, rather than the usual calculated performances. Lyca's skin flushed with indignation. General Krath, our sacred traditions are not sources of amusement. Of course not, attaché vas. Krath responded, his mandibles shifting in what might have been the Gronak equivalent of a conciliatory gesture. I merely appreciate the human's willingness to make amends through your Crystal Storm trial. A warrior faces consequences directly. He turned his compound eyes back to Arlo. I will observe this trial if that is permitted. The Gronak value how potential allies respond to unexpected challenges. Arlo exchanged a glance with Lyca, who gave a subtle nod. We would be honored by your presence, General, Arlo said carefully. Excellent. Krath's exoskeleton clicked as he shifted his massive frame. Then, I shall see you at dawn, human. Rest well. You will need your faculties intact for what comes. With that enigmatic statement, he departed, leaving Arlo and Lyca in uneasy silence. Is his interest in the trial unusual? Arlo asked, once they were alone again. Very, Lyca confirmed. The Gronak rarely involve themselves in other species' cultural rituals. General Krath must see some strategic value in this situation. Or he simply enjoys watching humans squirm, Arlo muttered. The faintest shimmer of amusement passed across Lyca's features. Perhaps both. I should return to my delegation now. The trial will be prepared for tomorrow's first light. I suggest you sleep, Arlo. The Crystal Storm is challenging. As she moved toward the door, Arlo called after her. Lyca, I truly am sorry for the embarrassment I caused you. She paused her back to him. For a moment, her skin displayed a complex pattern he couldn't interpret. When she spoke, her voice carried an emotional undertone the translator couldn't quite capture. Sometimes, Arlo Kent, the universe has strange paths for us all. With that cryptic statement, she departed, leaving Arlo alone with his thoughts and the looming trial ahead. Sleep proved elusive in Arlo's quarters that night. He spent hours reviewing everything he knew about Cillian culture, desperately searching for information about the Crystal Storm trial or the Vexus bonding ceremony. His databases contained frustratingly little on either topic, evidence of how closely the Cillians guarded their most sacred traditions. Morning arrived too quickly. Arlo was escorted by silent Cillian guards to a section of the diplomatic vessel he hadn't previously visited. The architecture here was distinctly Cillian, organic curves and surfaces that seemed to pulse subtly with bioluminescence. They arrived at a circular chamber with a central platform surrounded by observation areas. Ambassador Thrall awaited him along with Lyca, and surprisingly, General Krath. Captain Rodriguez stood to one side, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes conveying support. Officer Kent, Thrall, began formally. You have agreed to undergo the Crystal Storm to address your inappropriate invocation of the Vexus ritual. Do you understand that this trial will test your mental, emotional, and spiritual resources? I do, Arlo responded firmly. Very well. Thrall gestured to the central platform. The simulation chamber will create a personalized experience based on your own consciousness. What you experience will be unique to you, yet bound by the traditional parameters of the trial. As Arlo stepped onto the platform, Lyca approached. Remember, she said quietly, the storm reveals truth. Don't fight what you see, understand it. Before Arlo could ask what she meant, a transparent dome descended around the platform. Crystalline particles began to swirl within the enclosed space, catching light and refracting it in dazzling patterns. The particles moved faster, soon creating a vortex of light and color that obscured everything beyond the dome. Arlo's senses began to distort. The floor beneath him seemed to dissolve, and he felt suspended in a void filled only with the swirling crystals. Then abruptly, the storm coalesced into a scene. He stood on the observation deck of the Astra Voyager, but it was deserted. Through the vast windows, he could see unfamiliar stars and a looming planetary body that pulsed with ominous energy. "Hello." His voice echoed strangely, as if the space were both smaller and larger than it appeared. "They're gone, Arlo," came a voice behind him. He turned to find Laika, her skin a deep, mournful blue. "Both our species. This is what remains." "What happened?" he asked, heart racing, as he approached her. "The Alliance failed. The Dominion fleet arrived at the outer rim, and without a united front." Her form seemed to flicker, becoming momentarily transparent. "This is the consequence of misunderstanding, of failure to bridge differences." Arlo reached for her, but his hand passed through her form. "This isn't real," he said firmly. "This is the trial." Laika's image smiled sadly. "Is it? Or is this a glimpse of possibility?" "The crystal storm doesn't create falsehoods, Arlo. It reveals paths." The scene shifted abruptly. Arlo found himself in a Cillian garden, unlike any environment he had seen before. Plants that seemed half organic, half crystalline grew in geometric patterns around a central pool of luminescent liquid. Across the pool stood an elderly Cillian, his translucent skin marked with complex patterns that spoke of great age and wisdom. "You seek understanding," the elder said, his voice bypassing Arlo's ears and resonating directly in his mind. "Yet you do not understand what you seek." "I want to make amends for my mistake," Arlo responded. "Is that all?" the elder's form rippled. "Or do you seek connection? The words of Vexus do not come to lips by mere accident. They arise from deeper wells." The garden began to transform, the plants growing rapidly, extending tendrils toward Arlo. He felt a momentary panic, but remembered Laika's advice not to fight the experience. Instead, he remained still as the crystalline vegetation enveloped him. Rather than threatening, the touch felt like gentle questioning, as if the plants themselves were testing his intentions. "I respect the Cillian culture," Arlo said carefully. "I wouldn't presume to claim a right to your sacred bonds." "Yet you spoke the words," the elder insisted, drawing closer. "And she heard them. Tell me, human, what do you feel for the one called Laika?" The directness of the question startled Arlo. He had maintained strict professional boundaries in all his interactions with Laika, aware of the delicate diplomatic balance and his role as a representative of Earth. Yet in this strange space, with reality itself in flux around him, honesty seemed the only viable path. "Admiration," he admitted. "Fascination. She's brilliant and insightful. But I've never allowed myself to think beyond professional respect." "Perhaps that is your first failure," the elder said, his form beginning to dissolve into the swirling crystal particles. Not the words misspoken, but the truth unacknowledged. Before Arlo could respond, the scene changed again. He stood on the bridge of what appeared to be a warship. Through the view screen, he could see the Astra Voyager under attack, its shields flickering as enemy vessels, sleek, predatory ships, marked with the insignia of the Dominion, circled it like wolves. "We could have saved them," came General Krath's distinctive rumble from the captain's chair. The Gronach turned his compound eyes toward Arlo. "If the Alliance had been secured, if you had completed what you began." "What do you mean?" Arlo demanded, moving toward the Gronach commander. "What did I begin?" "The bond," Krath replied, as if it were obvious. "The Cillians believe that true alliances mirror the Vexus, a joining of distinct entities that retain their nature while creating something greater than either alone. Your accidental proposition could have been the catalyst for something unprecedented." "A diplomatic marriage?" Arlo asked incredulously. "A symbolic union," Krath corrected. "The Cillians respect symbols, human, as do the Gronach in our way." He gestured toward the view screen, where the battle continued. "Without symbols of commitment, words of alliance ring hollow." The scene dissolved once more, returning to the swirling crystal vortex. Arlo felt disoriented, unsure what was real and what was fabricated by the trial. Amidst the confusion, he forced himself to focus on what remained constant across the visions: the importance of the alliance, the threat of the Dominion, and the unexpected significance of his accidental proposition to Laika. Gradually, he became aware that the crystal storm was subsiding. The swirling particles slowed their frantic dance, settling into a gentle spiral that gradually dispersed. As clarity returned, Arlo found himself once again on the platform in the circular chamber, the dome retracting upward. The observers, Thrall, Krath, Rodriguez, and Laika, watched him intently. Arlo realized he had no idea how much time had passed, or what they had witnessed of his experience. "The trial is complete," Ambassador Thrall announced formally. "Officer Kent has faced the crystal storm and emerged intact." "What happens now?" Arlo asked, his voice hoarse, as if he had been shouting though he had no memory of doing so. "Now we deliberate," Thrall replied. "The significance of what you experienced must be interpreted according to our traditions. You will be summoned when a determination is made." As the Cillian delegation departed, General Krath lingered, his massive form silhouetted against the chamber entrance. "Interesting performance, human," he said, the translation device rendering his clicking speech into standard English. "Few outsiders maintain such composure in the crystal storm. The Grunach are reassessing your species' potential." With that enigmatic comment, he too departed, leaving only Captain Rodriguez and Arlo in the chamber. "Are you all right?" she asked, approaching the platform. "You were in there for over 3 hours." 3 hours, Arlo echoed in disbelief. It had felt like minutes. "I'm fine, I think, just disoriented." "What happened in there?" Arlo shook his head, struggling to articulate the experience. "It was like a series of visions. Possible futures, I think. Warnings about the Alliance failing. And something about the Vexus being more than just a personal bond. Something symbolic for the Alliance itself." Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "Are you saying they want you to actually go through with this bonding ceremony with Attaché Voss?" "I don't know," Arlo admitted. "It wasn't explicit, but there was definitely a suggestion that my mistake might have implications for the negotiations." "Well, we'll know soon enough," Rodriguez said pragmatically. "The formal Alliance session begins in 2 hours. I suggest you get yourself together before then." She studied him with a shrewd eye. "And Arlo. For what it's worth, the Grunach delegation seems impressed. General Krath has been speaking privately with his officers, and our intel suggests they're more engaged in the process than before." "That's something at least," Arlo said, drawing a deep breath. "I'll be ready for the session, Captain." As Rodriguez left, Arlo remained on the platform, replaying the visions in his mind. Something about the experience had shifted his perspective, not just on the diplomatic situation, but on his carefully maintained professional distance from Laika. The Elder's words echoed in his thoughts, not the words misspoken, but the truth unacknowledged. Had he been denying his true feelings all along? The Alliance chamber of the Astra Voyager had been designed to accommodate the physical and psychological preferences of all 3 species. The central space featured a triangular table with customized seating for humans, Cillians, and Grunach representatives. The lighting could be adjusted for different visual sensitivities, and atmospheric controls created localized environments suited to each species' comfort. When Arlo arrived, the chamber was already filled with tension. The Cillian delegation sat rigidly on one side of the triangle, their skin patterns subdued in formal diplomatic mode. The Grunach representatives, including General Krath, occupied another side, their exoskeletons gleaming under the chamber lights. The human delegation, led by Captain Rodriguez, completed the triangle. Ambassador Thrall rose as the formal session began. "Before we proceed with Alliance negotiations, we must address the unresolved matter of Officer Kent's invocation of the Vexus ritual." All eyes turned to Arlo, who maintained a composed expression, despite his inner turmoil. "Officer Kent has undergone the Crystal Storm trial." Thrall continued, and demonstrated considerable resilience and insight. Our cultural advisors have studied his responses and found them worthy of consideration. A murmur went through the chamber. Arlo caught Laika's eye across the table. Her skin displayed a pattern he hadn't seen before. Anticipation, perhaps, or concern. However, Thrall continued, the matter of the Vexus proposition remains unresolved. According to our most sacred traditions, words once spoken cannot be simply withdrawn. They must either be fulfilled or formally renounced through specific rituals. Captain Rodriguez leaned forward. Ambassador, while we respect your traditions, Officer Kent's statement was made without understanding its significance. Surely this can be addressed through the apology and trial he has already completed. If this were merely a personal matter, perhaps, Thrall acknowledged. But, as we stand on the threshold of a historic alliance, symbolic actions carry greater weight. He turned his gaze directly to Arlo. The Cillian High Council has transmitted specific instructions regarding this situation. They propose an unprecedented resolution. The chamber grew silent as delegates from all three species awaited Thrall's next words. Before we can proceed with alliance formalities, Officer Kent and Attaché Voss must complete a modified form of the Vexus ceremony. Gasps and murmurs erupted around the table. Laika's skin flashed a startled pink before she controlled her reaction. Arlo felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath him. Ambassador Rodriguez protested, "You cannot seriously be suggesting a forced bonding between representatives of our species as a prerequisite for diplomacy." Not forced, Thrall clarified. Voluntary, and not the full Vexus, which would indeed be inappropriate under these circumstances. Rather, a symbolic enactment of its initial phases, a demonstration of mutual understanding and respect that honors the words already spoken while acknowledging the unique context. General Krath's mandibles clicked rapidly in what the translator rendered as wry amusement. The Gronak find this proposal interesting. Symbolic gestures between potential allies demonstrate commitment beyond mere words on documents. Captain Rodriguez looked incredulous. Are both your civilizations suggesting that our alliance hinges on a ceremonial, what marriage between two individuals who barely know each other? Not marriage as you understand it, Thrall corrected. The initial phase of Vexus is an acknowledgement of potential, a formal exploration of compatibility without permanent bonding. It would demonstrate Earth's willingness to understand and honor Cillian traditions at their deepest level. And if we refuse, Rodriguez asked bluntly. Thrall's skin darkened slightly. Then we would have serious concerns about humanity's commitment to true cultural exchange and mutual respect. The High Council would likely reconsider the proposed alliance terms. The implications were clear. Months of careful negotiation, years of preliminary contact, all potentially undone by Arlo's linguistic misstep, and the Cillians' insistence on traditional resolution. I request a private consultation with my delegation, Rodriguez said formally. As the human representatives huddled at their section of the triangular table, Rodriguez fixed Arlo with an intense stare. This is unprecedented, she muttered. They're essentially holding the alliance hostage over a cultural misunderstanding. It's more than that, Arlo replied quietly. During the crystal storm, I saw visions suggesting the Vexus has deeper significance to them than we realized. It's their model for all meaningful partnerships, including diplomatic ones. Dr. Harrison, the delegation's xenoanthropologist, nodded thoughtfully. Many species project their mating or bonding patterns onto their diplomatic frameworks. For the Cillians, perhaps alliance literally follows the same conceptual structure as their pair bonding. That's fascinating academically, Rodriguez said with barely contained frustration. But it doesn't change the fact that they're asking Officer Kent to participate in an alien bonding ritual with someone he's known professionally for less than a year. Arlo took a deep breath. Captain, with respect, I'm willing to do this. If it secures the alliance, I consider it a small price to pay. Arlo, Rodriguez responded, dropping formal address. You don't know what you're agreeing to. This could have personal implications beyond the diplomatic sphere. "I'm aware," he said steadily. "But I believe this is the right path forward." And he hesitated, then continued more quietly. "I trust Laika. We've worked closely over these past months. If she believes this is necessary and appropriate, I'm inclined to respect her judgment." Rodriguez studied him carefully, then sighed. "Your call, Officer Kent. But I want it on record that this goes beyond standard diplomatic protocols." Their private consultation concluded, Rodriguez addressed the chamber. "The Earth delegation requires that Attaché Voss also freely consent to this arrangement, and that both participants receive complete information about what the ceremony entails before any commitment is made." Thrall inclined his head in agreement. "Of course, Attaché Voss." All eyes turned to Laika, whose luminescent patterns had stabilized into a composed configuration, despite the extraordinary circumstances. "I understand the diplomatic importance of this resolution," she said carefully. "If Officer Kent is willing, I consent to participate in the modified Vexus ritual." "Then it is agreed," Thrall announced. "The ceremony will take place this evening in the Bio-Presidium Garden. Cultural advisors will provide both participants with necessary preparation." As the session moved on to other matters, Arlo found it nearly impossible to focus. He had just agreed to participate in an alien bonding ceremony, about which he knew almost nothing, with a woman who had begun as a professional contact and become, what a colleague, a friend, something more complex that he had not allowed himself to define. The remainder of the formal session passed in a blur of diplomatic language and provisional agreements. When it concluded, Arlo was approached by an elderly Cillian female, who introduced herself as Elder Trath, cultural guardian for the delegation. "You must prepare for the Vexus prelude," she said, her ancient skin displaying patterns so complex they seemed to tell entire stories. "Come with me." In a private preparation chamber, Elder Trath explained the ceremony while presenting Arlo with ceremonial Cillian garments, flowing robes of a material that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. "The initial phase of Vexus is called the resonance," she explained. "It is normally performed between Cillians who are considering a life bond but have not yet committed. It allows for a limited telepathic connection, enough to sense basic emotional truth, but not to access thoughts or memories." "Will it be different because I'm human?" Arlo asked, examining the strange garments. "Yes," Trath acknowledged. "Your species lacks the natural telepathic receptors of Cillians. The ceremonial elixir will temporarily enhance your neural patterns to permit basic resonance, but the connection will be more limited than between two Cillians." "Is it dangerous?" "No," she assured him, "though you may experience sensations unfamiliar to humans. The elixir has been modified based on human physiology and tested extensively in our laboratories." Arlo raised an eyebrow at this information. "You've prepared for human Cillian bonding ceremonies before?" Elder Trath's skin displayed what might have been amusement. "We prepare for all possibilities, Officer Kent. The universe unfolds in unexpected patterns." She continued her explanation, describing the stages of the ceremony and what would be expected of him. As evening approached, Arlo was escorted to the Bio-Presidium Garden, a vast chamber at the heart of the Astra Voyager, where specimens from dozens of worlds grew in carefully maintained habitats. For the ceremony, a central area had been cleared and decorated with crystalline structures that caught and amplified the bioluminescence of special Cillian plants placed in a circle. The Cillian delegation had assembled along one side of the circle, with the human representatives opposite them. To Arlo's surprise, the entire Gronic delegation, including General Krath, had also arrived to observe the unprecedented event. Arlo took his place at the edge of the circle, wearing the ceremonial robes that felt impossibly light on his skin. Across from him, Laika emerged in similar attire, though her garments shimmered with patterns that seemed to reflect her internal bioluminescence. Ambassador Thrall stepped forward to address the gathered representatives. "Today, we witness a unique adaptation of the sacred Vexa's prelude, a bridge between two species who seek mutual understanding as the foundation of alliance. Elder Trath approached with two crystal vessels containing a luminescent blue liquid. She presented one to Laika and one to Arlo. The resonance elixir, she explained for the benefit of all present. It will allow temporary attunement between different neural patterns. Arlo studied the swirling liquid, then looked across at Laika. Her eyes met his, and he saw in them not diplomatic calculation, but something more personal, uncertainty perhaps, but also determination and what might even have been anticipation. Together, Elder Trath instructed. Arlo raised the vessel to his lips as Laika did the same. The liquid tasted of something between honey and starlight, if such a thing were possible. It seemed to evaporate instantly upon touching his tongue, leaving a tingling sensation that spread rapidly throughout his body. The effect was subtle at first, a heightened awareness of his surroundings, particularly of Laika. The luminescent patterns beneath her translucent skin seemed suddenly more meaningful, as if he could almost interpret their complex language. As instructed, he stepped forward into the circle as she did the same. The participants will now exchange the traditional phrases of resonance, Elder Trath announced, adapted for this unique circumstance. Laika spoke first, her voice, carrying musical harmonics that seemed to vibrate in perfect attunement with the crystalline structures surrounding them. I stand before you as I am separate, yet seeking understanding. I offer resonance without reservation. Arlo repeated the phrase that Elder Trath had taught him, struggling to produce the complex tonal variations of the Cillian language. I approach with respect for your separate self, offering resonance in the space between us. As the final words left his lips, the garden's lighting dimmed, leaving only the bioluminescence of the Cillian plants and the crystals to illuminate the circle. Arlo felt a strange sensation, as if the space between himself and Laika had become charged with energy. Now, Elder Trath instructed softly, extend your hands, palms forward, mirroring each other without touching. Arlo raised his hands, as instructed, holding them before him with palms facing Laika's. She did the same, her slender fingers extended toward his, across a gap of perhaps 20 centimeters. The air between their hands seemed to shimmer with invisible energy. Focus on the space between, Elder Trath continued. Not on taking or giving, but on the shared field of potential. Arlo concentrated as instructed, allowing his awareness to expand into the space between their hands. At first, he felt nothing beyond the continuing tingle of the elixir in his system. Then gradually, a new sensation emerged, a presence that was unmistakably Laika, yet experienced not through his physical senses, but through some deeper perception. Across their resonant connection, he felt a complex swirl of emotions, from her apprehension, curiosity, a sense of duty, but also something warmer that she seemed to be carefully containing. His own emotions must have been equally transparent to her, as her eyes widened slightly in response to whatever she perceived from him. The resonance is established. Elder Trath announced, her voice, seeming to come from a great distance. You may now lower your barriers further, if you choose to experience the first level of Vexus attunement. Arlo wasn't entirely sure how to lower barriers he hadn't known existed until minutes ago, but he focused on the connection between them, and mentally envisioned opening himself to deeper understanding. The effect was immediate and startling, a flood of emotional impressions from Laika, too complex to categorize in human terms, but carrying unmistakable threads of genuine interest, growing affection, and professional respect interwoven with personal attraction she had carefully concealed. Laika's skin flushed a brilliant pattern of gold, and rose as she clearly received a similar flood from him. For a moment that seemed both fleeting and eternal, they stood connected by something beyond physical senses, a sharing of essential emotional truth that transcended cultural differences. Elder Trath's voice broke gently into their shared experience. You may now complete the resonance with the traditional gesture of acknowledgement. As they had rehearsed, Arlo and Laika each raised their right hand to touch their own forehead, then heart, then extended the hand palm up toward the other, a Sicilian gesture signifying, "I have seen your truth and offer recognition of what lies between us." As they completed the gesture, the resonant connection between them gradually faded, though Arlo felt that something fundamental had changed. He had experienced Laika's emotions directly, without the mediation of language or cultural interpretation, and she had experienced his in return. Whatever happened in the diplomatic sphere, they would never again be merely professional contacts. "The Vexus prelude is complete," Elder Trath announced to the assembled delegates. "The words spoken have been honored through the resonance." Ambassador Thrall stepped forward, his skin displaying formal patterns of acknowledgement. "The Sicilian delegation recognizes this observance of our sacred tradition. Officer Kent has demonstrated respect for our ways beyond what protocol demands." To everyone's surprise, General Krath moved to the edge of the circle, his massive exoskeletal form gleaming in the crystalline light. The Gronak also recognized this act of cultural bridge building. It is unprecedented in our experience of interspecies relations. Captain Rodriguez, representing Earth, completed the triangle of acknowledgement. The human delegation expresses gratitude for this opportunity to deepen mutual understanding through cultural exchange. With the formal recognitions complete, the ceremonial atmosphere gradually dissolved as the garden's normal lighting returned. Delegates began to disperse, many casting curious glances at Arlo and Laika as they did so. Arlo remained where he stood, feeling strangely disoriented as the effects of the elixir slowly faded. Laika approached him, her skin still displaying traces of the emotional patterns he had experienced directly moments before. "Are you all right?" she asked quietly. "Yes," he answered, finding that it was true despite the extraordinary experience. "That was unlike anything I could have imagined." "For me as well," she admitted. "The resonance between different species is rare, even in this modified form. I wasn't certain it would succeed." Before Arlo could respond, Captain Rodriguez joined them. "Well, that was certainly the most unusual diplomatic resolution I've witnessed in 20 years of service," she said, with characteristic directness. "But apparently effective. Ambassador Thrall has indicated that the alliance negotiations can proceed without further ceremonial requirements." "That's good news," Arlo said, though he found himself strangely ambivalent. The resonance had revealed deeper possibilities between himself and Laika that now hung unspoken between them. "Officer Kent," Rodriguez continued, "you should know that during the ceremony we received a priority communication from Fleet Command. A Dominion battle group has been detected at the edge of this sector." Arlo's attention snapped fully to the captain. "The Dominion here." The Dominion was a mysterious collective of species from beyond the known galactic arm, aggressive, expansionist, and technologically advanced. Until now, they had remained a distant threat, occasionally raiding outposts at the fringes of explored space, but never venturing this deep into known territory. "Yes," Rodriguez confirmed grimly. 3 capital ships and support vessels. They haven't made hostile moves yet, but their presence alone is concerning. Fleet Command believes they may be testing our response capabilities and our relationship with the Sicilians and Grenache. "Does the Sicilian delegation know?" Laika asked, her professional demeanor reasserting itself despite the intimate connection they had just shared. "Ambassador Thrall was informed simultaneously with our delegation," Rodriguez confirmed. "I suspect the Gronak military already had this intelligence given General Krath's behavior during the Alliance sessions." "This changes everything," Arlo said, understanding dawning. "The Alliance isn't just about trade and cultural exchange anymore. It's about security." "Precisely," Rodriguez agreed. "Which is why I need both of you at the emergency session being convened in 1 hour. Whatever personal or cultural complexities exist between you, now, they'll have to be addressed later. Right now, we need your skills as representatives and communicators." As Rodriguez departed to prepare for the emergency session, Arlo and Laika were left alone in the now empty garden. The ceremonial atmosphere had been replaced by a palpable tension as the reality of the Dominion threat sank in. "The timing cannot be coincidence," Laika said quietly. "The Dominion must have been monitoring the alliance negotiations and chose this moment to make their presence known," Arlo agreed. "When we're still sorting out the details of how we'll work together." Laika's skin displayed patterns of concern. "My people have had limited contact with the Dominion, but all of it troubling. They do not recognize the sovereignty of other species, or the concept of diplomatic negotiation as we understand it. Earth has lost 3 outposts to their raids in the past decade," Arlo added, "but we've never confronted their capital ships directly." He hesitated, then addressed what lay between them. "Laika, about what happened during the resonance." "We should prepare for the emergency session," she interrupted gently. "But yes, we will need to discuss it after this crisis is addressed." Arlo nodded, understanding her priorities, even as he felt the lingering connection between them, a subtle awareness of her emotional state that hadn't entirely faded with the ceremony's end. Whatever was developing between them personally would have to wait. The alliance and potentially the safety of all 3 civilizations now hung in the balance. The emergency session convened in the Alliance chamber, with an atmosphere of tightly controlled urgency. Tactical displays projected in the center of the triangular table showed the position of the Dominion battle group relative to the Astra Voyager and nearby systems. Ambassador Thrall spoke first, his skin patterns displaying formal diplomatic restraint despite the crisis. "The presence of Dominion forces in this sector represents an unprecedented incursion into territory recognized as neutral under the Galactic Concordat. The Concordat means nothing to the Dominion." General Krath responded, his translator, rendering his clicking speech with military crispness. "They recognize only strength and advantage." Captain Rodriguez leaned forward. "Then perhaps it's time we demonstrated the strength of our potential alliance. Together, our combined fleets could present a unified response that gives them reason to reconsider their presence here." "A premature display of military coordination could be interpreted as aggression," Thrall cautioned. "The Cillian Confederation prefers diplomatic approaches when possible." Krath's mandibles clicked rapidly, in what the translator didn't bother to interpret, but clearly conveyed skepticism. "Diplomatic approaches require parties who recognize diplomacy, Ambassador. The Dominion understands only dominance. It is in their name and their nature." The debate continued, with the Cillians advocating for careful communication, the Gronic pushing for immediate military positioning, and the humans seeking a middle path. As the linguistic officer, Arlo found himself in the unusual position of helping craft potential communication strategies for a species known to reject standard diplomatic protocols. Throughout the tense discussion, Arlo was acutely aware of Laika across the table. The lingering effects of the resonance ceremony allowed him to sense her emotional responses, even when her professional demeanor revealed nothing. She, in turn, occasionally glanced at him in ways that suggested she maintained a similar awareness of his internal state. As the strategic debate reached a critical point, Ambassador Thrall made an unexpected declaration. "The Cillian High Council has authorized me to formally commit our forces to a joint defensive posture, but only if we can be certain of the absolute commitment of our potential allies." "Earth has already pledged its support," Rodriguez responded immediately. "The Gronic Empire stands ready," General Krath affirmed. "Words," Thrall said dismissively, his skin darkening. "All species have words. In this moment of crisis, we require more tangible assurance." An uneasy silence fell over the chamber, as delegates exchanged confused glances. The Vexus ceremony between Officer Kent and Attaché Voss was merely a prelude, Thrall continued. "A beginning of understanding. The High Council proposes that the alliance be sealed through the completion of the full ceremony." Shock rippled through the chamber. Arlo felt his heart rate accelerate as he processed the ambassador's words. The full Vexus ceremony, Not just the preliminary resonance they had experienced, but the complete bonding ritual that permanently joined Cillians in their equivalent of marriage. Captain Rodriguez rose to her feet, anger evident in her stance. Ambassador, this is outrageous. You cannot condition military cooperation in the face of a common threat on a forced personal union between representatives. Not forced, Thrall corrected just as he had before. Voluntary, but necessary as a demonstration of genuine commitment to shared future and values. His gaze shifted between Arlo and Laika. The participants have already begun the process. The resonance revealed compatibility. Laika spoke for the first time since the emergency session began. Ambassador, with respect, the full Vexus is a life decision made after careful consideration. It cannot be used as a diplomatic bargaining chip. These are extraordinary circumstances, Attaché Voss, Thrall responded coldly. The High Council believes that only an extraordinary commitment can forge the trust necessary for true alliance against the Dominion threat. General Krath, who had been observing the exchange with apparent fascination, suddenly interjected. The Gronach find this biological approach to alliance curious, but not without merit. Our own traditions include battle bonding between warriors who will fight together. This is completely different, Rodriguez protested. Battle bonding doesn't permanently link individuals on a telepathic and emotional level. Does it not? Krath's compound eyes gleamed with what might have been amusement. Perhaps our traditions are not so different after all, Captain. The debate continued, growing increasingly heated as the Cillian delegation insisted on the symbolic importance of completing the Vexus ceremony, while the humans argued against making personal relationships a condition of military cooperation. The Gronach remarkably seemed to find the Cillian position reasonable, which only added to the humans' frustration. Throughout the increasingly tense exchange, Arlo and Laika remained silent, exchanging glances that carried more meaning than words could convey. The residual connection from the resonance allowed each to sense the other's tumultuous emotions, confusion, indignation at being used as diplomatic pawns, but also an undeniable curiosity about the deeper connection the full ceremony might bring. Finally, Arlo requested permission to speak. I would like a private word with Attaché Voss, he said formally. As the individuals most directly affected by this proposal, we should have the opportunity to discuss it without diplomatic pressure. Ambassador Thrall seemed ready to object, but Rodriguez quickly supported the request. That's the very least we can do. This session will recess for 30 minutes, while Officer Kent and Attaché Voss confer. Once again, Arlo found himself in a private conference room, with Laika, the fate of the Alliance somehow tied to their personal relationship. But this time, the stakes were immeasurably higher, with Dominion warships hovering at the edge of the sector. This is unconscionable, Laika said as soon as they were alone, her skin displaying patterns of agitation Arlo could now partially interpret. To use the sacred Vexus as diplomatic leverage, it goes against everything my people claim to value. I agree, Arlo said, pacing the small room. But I also understand the strategic reality. Without a unified response, the Dominion could exploit divisions between our civilizations. That doesn't justify forcing us into a permanent bond, Laika argued. The full Vexus isn't just symbolic, Arlo. It creates a lifelong telepathic connection that can never be severed. Among my people, it is a sacred choice made after years of consideration. Arlo stopped pacing and turned to face her directly. What did you experience during the resonance? He asked suddenly. The question caught her off guard. Her skin flushed with patterns he now recognized as something between embarrassment and affection. I sensed your authentic respect for my culture, your determination to correct your mistake, and, she hesitated, and something more personal, Arlo finished for her. Just as I sensed from you. Laika didn't deny it. What exists between us is genuine, Arlo, but that doesn't mean we should be pushed into the most sacred commitment my species recognizes, simply to satisfy political expediency. I agree completely, Arlo said. But I'm wondering if there's a third option beyond either submitting to diplomatic pressure or refusing and potentially undermining the alliance. What do you mean? The Vexus is sacred to your people precisely because it represents a genuine commitment based on authentic connection, right? Yes, Laika confirmed. It is meant to formalize a bond that already exists in essence, not to create one where none exists. Then, perhaps we can use that very sacredness as our counter-argument, Arlo suggested. We could agree to continue the process of cultural exchange and personal connection that began with the resonance, including the possibility of a future Vexus, when and if our relationship develops naturally to that point. But we refuse to trivialize the ceremony by rushing it for political convenience. Laika's skin brightened with what Arlo now recognized as approval and admiration. That approach honors the true spirit of the Vexus, while rejecting its use as a diplomatic tool. Ambassador Thrall would find it difficult to argue against without contradicting Cillian's spiritual principles. Exactly, Arlo said, feeling a surge of hope. We acknowledge what exists between us, which is real, if still developing, while insisting that the sacred nature of the Vexus itself demands it not be used as a political expedient. They spent the remaining time carefully crafting their response drawing on Laika's deep knowledge of Cillian's spiritual traditions and Arlo's diplomatic training. When they returned to the emergency session, they presented a united front that caught Ambassador Thrall off guard. Ambassador Laika began. Officer Kent and I have discussed your proposal with the seriousness it deserves. We have also consulted the ancient writings on Vexus that Elder Trath provided during our preparation for the resonance ceremony. Thrall's skin displayed patterns of attentiveness as Laika continued. The Codex of Bonding explicitly states that Vexus cannot be entered for reasons external to the bond itself without diminishing its sacred nature. To use the ceremony as a diplomatic tool would violate its very essence as a spiritual practice. Arlo picked up seamlessly where she left off. Instead, we propose something more authentic. Attaché Voss and I acknowledge the genuine connection that began with the resonance. We commit to exploring that connection with sincerity and respect for Cillian traditions. This might include in the future the completion of Vexus, if our relationship develops naturally to that point, Laika added. But to rush such a sacred bond for political expediency would be to dishonor everything it represents in Cillian culture. Ambassador Thrall's skin displayed complex patterns Arlo couldn't fully interpret, but which suggested internal conflict. Elder Trath, who had remained silent throughout most of the proceedings, now spoke. The young ones speak truth, she said, her ancient voice carrying unexpected authority. The High Council's demand, while well-intentioned, contradicts the sacred texts. Vexus cannot be commanded, only chosen freely, when souls are ready. A murmur went through the Cillian delegation as they conferred in their own language. Finally, Thrall's skin settled into a pattern of formal acknowledgement. The delegation recognizes the validity of this interpretation, he conceded. We withdraw the requirement of immediate Vexus completion, while acknowledging the partial bond already established through resonance. General Krath clicked his mandibles in what seemed to be approval. The Gronic respect commitment to principle. This demonstration of integrity strengthens our confidence in the alliance, rather than weakening it. Captain Rodriguez, clearly relieved, moved quickly to refocus the discussion. Then, let us return to the immediate matter of the Dominion presence. I propose a joint communication, followed by coordinated fleet movements, to demonstrate our unified position. With the personal impasse resolved, the three delegations turned their full attention to the strategic response to the Dominion incursion. Over the next several hours, they hammered out a plan that balanced Cillian diplomatic caution, Gronach, military assertiveness, and human flexibility. As dawn approached, the alliance was formally signed not under duress, from external pressure, but through genuine compromise and mutual respect. Joint fleet movements were coordinated with vessels from all three civilizations, taking up defensive positions that neither threatened the Dominion directly nor conceded territory. The response proved effective. Within 48 hours, the Dominion battle group withdrew to the edge of the sector, maintaining a watching presence, but no longer presenting an immediate threat. Intelligence suggested they had not anticipated such a swift and unified response from civilizations they had previously observed operating independently. In the aftermath of the crisis and successful alliance formation, Arlo and Laika found themselves with a rare moment of privacy in the Biopresidium Garden, where their resonance ceremony had taken place days earlier. The diplomatic vessel was preparing to depart for Earth, where the alliance would be formally ratified by all three governments. "What happens now?" Arlo asked, as they walked among the alien flora. "With the alliance secured and the immediate crisis addressed. Professionally, I've been assigned as permanent cultural liaison to Earth," Laika said. "I'll be establishing the first Cillian diplomatic office on your planet." "That's excellent news," Arlo said, genuinely pleased. "And, personally," Laika's skin displayed patterns. He was learning to read more fluently, affection, but also thoughtfulness. The resonance creates a connection that typically fades over time without the complete vexus. But since it occurred between different species, the effects are unpredictable. "I still sense your emotional states sometimes," Arlo admitted. "Not as clearly as during the ceremony, but enough to know that you're feeling uncertain right now." "As are you," she responded with a small smile. "The connection goes both ways, remember?" They stopped before a flowering plant that resembled an earth orchid, but with crystalline structures growing from its center. Its beauty seemed an appropriate metaphor for what existed between them, something both familiar and alien natural, yet extraordinary. "We have time," Laika said softly, "to discover what this connection might become without diplomatic pressure or crisis forcing our hands." "I'd like that," Arlo replied, "to explore possibilities on our own terms." Above them, through the transparent dome of the garden, the stars shimmered against the void. Somewhere out there, the Dominion watched and waited. The Alliance would face challenges in the years ahead, cultural misunderstandings, political tensions perhaps, even military confrontations. But in this moment what mattered was the connection that had begun with a linguistic mistake and developed into something neither could have anticipated. As Arlo gently extended his hand, and Laika's slender fingers intertwined with his, the lingering resonance between them strengthened momentarily, creating a bridge between two very different beings who had found common ground in the vast expanse of the cosmos. Their story, like the alliance they had helped forge, was just beginning. What had started with embarrassment and near disaster had transformed into possibility and hope. And in a universe filled with unknown threats and wonders alike, perhaps that was the most anyone could ask for, a genuine connection that transcended boundaries of species culture and the very stars themselves.